Hi, it's Tony Chapman. I'm putting out a mini, but what I hope is a special edition of Chatter That Matters. I want to talk about you and me, about Canada, and whether our destiny is a matter of choice or chance. In researching this episode, I actually went back over 100 years to a decade that was similar to ours. The history labeled the Roaring Twenties, but one we left to chance. We'd survived World War I. At that time, Europe was shaped by nationalism, militarism, imperial rivalry, rigid alliances. Ethnic groups wanted their own nations, and existing nations wanted greater power and prestige. Imperial competition created constant friction as European powers fought over colonies, trade routes, and influence. Alliances locked countries into promises to defend one another, turning local disputes into continental drifts. And World War I was an ugly war, fought in trenches with mortal combat and bayonets, and soldiers struggled not to die as they moved inches against barbed wire and enemy fire. And in the last year of the war, the Spanish flu arrived, a devastating global influenza. And for 3 years, it infected roughly 1/3 of the global population and killed an estimated 50 million people, possibly more. It struck in multiple waves, with the deadliest occurring after World War I, when weakened populations and crowded cities and mass troop movements accelerated its spread. Unlike typical influenza, it disproportionately killed young, healthy adults, overwhelmed hospitals, and left communities stunned by its speed and scale. No vaccines, limited medical knowledge, and poor communication, societies relied on quarantines, masks, and public closures. Measures that echo our modern pandemic responses. And the Spanish flu reshaped public health systems, and it remains a stark reminder of how vulnerable the world can be when biology, mobility, and misinformation collide. And when the virus loosened its grip in 1920, the world didn't just let loose, it roared. Jazz and champagne and dances, naughtiness, and a belief that humanity had finally figured things out. Our ideology was absolute, our belief in endless prosperity so defined, we speculated and gambled until the entire world came crumbling down in 1929 because we'd left our destiny to chance. So let's fast forward to today. New Year's Eve marked the quarter-century mark, and January 1st, 2026 marks the midpoint of this decade. And what a century this has been. It didn't arrive quietly. It began with the shock of 9/11.
I'm on the 106th floor of the World Trade Center. We just had an explosion.
My building got hit by a plane. I think I'm okay. I'm safe now, but it's smoky. I just want to say how much I love you.
A moment that shattered the illusions of safety and reshaped global politics overnight, pulling the world into decades of war in Afghanistan and Iraq, expanding surveillance and permanently altering the balance between security and freedom. The 2008 global financial crisis that exposed deep structural flaws in the economic system, wiping out trillions in wealth and trust. China accelerating its rise from world's factory to a global superpower, extending its economic reach, technological ambitions, and military capability. And by the end of the first decade, the Arab Spring revealed both the power and fragility of mass movements. And Russia had begun testing borders again, while Europe continued to operate under the assumption that the United States would always underwrite its security. And just when it felt that our century could not absorb another shock, this decade began with COVID.
More than 118,000 cases in 114 countries.
A global pandemic shut down the world, fractured trust in institutions, isolated populations, and normalized emergency powers.
Characterized as a pandemic.
And then we had Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, one that shattered Europe's remaining illusions, forced democratic nations to confront a reality that they'd long avoided, that security could not be outsourced indefinitely, and that values required defense. On October 7th, the brutal, horrific attack on Israel and the devastating war that followed, which flattened the Gaza Strip, reigniting the Middle East as a tinderbox, and exported anti-Semitism far beyond the region onto campuses, city streets, outside synagogues, often met with hesitation and a moral shrug from our leaders. And layered onto this, the accelerating power grab of the rights of citizens, energy, rare minerals, food, data, the rise of artificial intelligence that could define the future of work as unwork, democracy strained by polarization, a lack of accountability and transparency, tariffs, Trumps, and the more is the widening gap between those who have a lot and those who have very little. Yes, we're again in the Roaring Twenties, but this time we're roaring with food insecurity, job uncertainty, unaffordability, vulnerability, and a growing sense of impossibility. And the essential question is, do we leave humanity's future to chance and watch how the cards unfold? Or do we make it a matter of choice, where we put the human back into humanity? And that brings me to Canada, a country I love from the bottom of my heart. Canada's always had problems, privilege, and abuses of power, and divisions. But we were also a very special country. We were a country where citizens and newcomers could chase dreams, own homes, raise families, where tolerance was admired, democratic values and freedoms were celebrated and defended, where we were part of something bigger and better. But at the same time, you could retain your culture, your norms, and your religious beliefs. We were a small country, but we brought in universal health care, unemployment insurance, staged 2 World Expos, Olympic Games, put an arm on the space shuttle, became a tech powerhouse with companies like Nortel and BlackBerry, invented AI, and so much more. Canada and the United States shared a rare and almost magical relationship, defined by deep trust and open borders for trade and ideas, shared democratic values, and the quiet confidence that the world's largest undefended border symbolized partnership rather than vulnerability. Canada knew who our allies were and who our enemies were. Those who know me or follow me on LinkedIn know that I'm not a political voice. I don't care who's in power as long as they don't abuse it. I don't care whether you vote red or blue or orange or green. I speak from the perspective of a Canadian who feels we've lost our way. So what happened? Easiest way to frame it is we lost a decade at a time when others seized theirs. We were consumed by ideology instead of economy. We lacked accountability. We shut the door on transparency. We became bloated by deficits and debt and the bureaucracy that comes with too much going into working government and too little working for us. We sprayed our tax and borrowed dollars around the world. But when I look at Canada, I look with shame at the amount of people today who are homeless, living paycheck to paycheck, the millions who rely on food banks, the growing addiction to drugs and gambling, the blatant crime that goes unchecked. And I look at several bills now in Parliament that will pull more power from the voter into a more centralized command. What I see isn't more of the same, it's even more of the same. Canada needs to get our act together. We need to make our destiny a matter of choice, not chance. This isn't political speak. This is our reality. And I have some thoughts for Prime Minister Carney. There's no doubt in my mind that the Liberals will have a majority as we see our democracy move from voter intent to footloose and party-free. So Mark Carney, you have one shot to become one of Canada's greatest prime ministers, to create a legacy that will be remembered for centuries through your ability to turn Canada around. But to do so, you must rebuild trust in our democracy and political leaders. And this can only happen through transparency, accountability, and fiscal responsibility. Our Auditor General has presented several serious allegations on how our tax and borrowed dollars have been spent. Your party can no longer bury them. They must be investigated and consequences must be sought. Full stop. Second, our finances are strained and priorities are mounting just to keep our lights on, let alone light our path to the future. Invest where we can get a perpetual return. We need to prioritize $100 billion to build a high-speed train to connect cities 2 hours apart on the highway? that won't get completed until long after technology creates new forms of transportation, flying drones, for example. Instead of investing in connecting two cities, invest in connecting Canada to the world. Refurbish our ports, build energy pipelines, make Canada a superpower in creativity, the new economy, agriculture, tourism, content creation, energy, longevity, sustainability. Lead in patents and scaling made in Canada enterprises instead of spending billions enticing multinationals to set up branch plants. Invest in teaching our kids to fish so they fish for a lifetime. Celebrate ideas, not ideology. Critical thinking versus criticizing our past. Bring law and order back to our streets. Stand hard against anti-Semitism and all forms of racism. Strategic immigration. Only invite in the best and the brightest. Vet them and turn away or send back those who do not embrace our Canadian values. Our refugee system. Make it for refugees, not some loophole for criminals and others to exploit and drain our treasury. And move back the bills in cabinet to centralize your power and provide an even thicker blanket for secrecy and immunity. Earn it through voter intent. Strike a lasting and permanent deal with the Indigenous people so that we move forward together. And build bridges to the Western provinces who feel ignored and unappreciated. Be the leader who gets their fiscal house in order. We have proven conclusively that we cannot borrow our way to the future. We must have an economy that earns our way there, and those who earn and profit here must pay their taxes here. Mark Carney, this is your legacy. There are many great Canadians who I know will support you if you choose Canada and Canadians over ideology or honoring one voter base over another. If you choose to unleash and unlock possibility, positivity, prosperity, and purpose. I'm in. This Thursday, we come back with an episode of Chatter That Matters with Brian Scudamore. I chose this episode because Brian is a relentlessly optimistic Canadian entrepreneur who turned a simple idea into 1-800-GOT-JUNK by combining hustle, culture-first leadership, and an unwavering belief that ordinary business can be built in extraordinary ways and ordinary people can do extraordinary things. Tony Chapman, thanks for listening. Chatter That Matters. Let's chat soon.